Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. One plate. One word. That's all it took to break what years had built. Dinner was supposed to be quiet. The kind of dinner where you chew more than you talk. Where the clink of forks replaces conversation. Nothing special. Just Josh and Amy at the same table, like always. Frozen lasagna. Overcooked. She made it. Said nothing as she dropped the plate in front of me. I said thank you. She didn't respond. I should have seen it coming. She'd been simmering for weeks. Shorter answers. Longer silences. That tight smile that never reached her eyes. I thought it was just stress, work, hormones, the season. But sometimes the silence isn't a pause. It's a countdown. And tonight, it hit 0. It started with a comment. Innocent, really. She said something about feeling invisible. I said something about being tired. She pushed her plate aside. You never listened, she said, her tone sharper than the fork she held. I looked up. I'm listening now. Too late. You always do this. Make everything about you. The room felt thinner. There was a tremor in her hand, and then it happened. She stood, plate in hand. And in one swift, furious motion, she threw it. Porcelain shattered against the wall behind me. Lasagna smeared like blood on drywall. Fork spinning on the floor. And then, the word. Selfish. Not screamed. Declared. As if that word, that single, brutal syllable, was the verdict in a trial I didn't even know I was on trial for. I didn't move. Not when the plate hit. Not when the insult landed. I didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't rise. I just sat there, staring at the cracks on the wall like they were the blueprint of a life that was finally splitting open. She kept talking sharp words, broken sentences, something about always giving, never getting. But it was white noise. My mind had already detached. I remember thinking, maybe the real selfish act is staying. Staying in something that's already dead. Staying silent just to avoid another explosion. That's when the quiet crept in. Not the kind that makes you uncomfortable, the kind that makes you decide. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't beg. It just is. Heavy. Cold. Final. She sat back down across from me, breathing hard, waiting for the reaction. Waiting for the storm she was used to. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done. That moment, her eyes darting, searching mine for a sign of fight, was the moment I realized she had no idea what real loss looked like. Not yet. But she was about to learn. She thought she won the fight. She didn't notice she lost the war. I stood up from the table without flinching. No raised voice. No sigh of defeat. No parting shot. Just silence. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't explain, doesn't negotiate. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. Same place they'd always been. Funny how routine can turn into ritual when it marks the end. Amy didn't understand what was happening. Not yet. She was still wound up, breathing fast from the drama she'd created, mistaking noise for dominance. She expected another round. Another clash of words. But I wasn't giving her that. I wasn't playing anymore. She followed me with her eyes as I walked down the hall. I knew that look. Not guilt. Not even concern. Just confusion. Like watching a machine stop working without knowing where the power was cut. I heard her say my name, but it barely registered. I walked into the bedroom, opened the closet, and took out the smallest bag I had. Not a suitcase. Not a statement. Just a quiet exit. I packed like a man who wasn't leaving forever, but needed to remember what it felt like to be alone. A shirt, a hoodie, a charger, my shaving kit. I didn't even take socks. It wasn't about the destination. It was about motion. She appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, still trying to figure out how I'd slipped out of her control without a single word. Where are you going? She asked. Her voice had lost its sharpness. Now it just sounded unsettled. I didn't answer. She stepped forward, maybe to block me, maybe to reach out. I walked past her. She turned to follow. I could feel the tension building behind me, the disbelief, the panic just beginning to brew beneath her skin. Josh, she said again, but softer now. I stopped in the hallway. Not to respond. Just to breathe. The air felt different. Heavier. Cleaner. Like the moment before a storm when the clouds haven't broken, but you know they will. I turned my head halfway. Not enough to meet her eyes. Just enough to let her know I heard her. Then I looked forward again and kept walking. The front door felt lighter than I remembered. I opened it slowly, stepped outside. The night air hit my face like truth, cold, unfiltered, honest. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car door slammed. But inside me, there was only stillness. Behind me, the hallway remained lit, her silhouette frozen in the frame. She didn't chase me. Not yet. She thought this was still a scene, a moment in an ongoing act, a pause between arguments. She didn't realize the show was over. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even close it hard. I just let it shut behind me with the softest click. The kind of sound you don't hear right away. The kind that echoes later, when it's already too late. I got in my car. Sat there for a moment. No music. No destination in mind. Just the weight of silence in my chest and the strange, clean space that comes when you finally stop fighting for something that doesn't exist anymore. I wasn't running. I wasn't punishing. I was done. Let her sit with the last thing she never expected from me, indifference. Leaving doesn't always look like slamming doors. Sometimes, it's just not looking back. I drove aimlessly for almost an hour. No radio. No calls. Just the hum of the engine and the echo of everything I didn't say. I wasn't angry. Not even hurt. The wound had closed a long time ago. I just hadn't realized it until now. All I felt was space. Not freedom. Not yet. But space. Room to breathe in a life that had stopped making sense. I parked near a gas station off the highway. Not because I needed gas, but because it was empty. Lit by flickering fluorescents, surrounded by quiet nothing. I sat there in the lot, engine ticking, watching my breath fog the glass. I checked my phone. Nothing from her. Not yet. She was probably pacing, rehearsing the conversation, trying to decide how to reel me back in. But she didn't understand. I wasn't drifting. I was gone. She thought I'd be back. I always had been. After every fight, every cold shoulder, every passive-aggressive jab disguised as a joke, I'd return. Like gravity. Like habit. Like a fool. But something had shifted. And once that shift happens, there's no going back to the way things were. Not without lying to yourself. And I was done with that, too. The streetlight above flickered. A bug buzzed against the windshield. Somewhere nearby, a freight train moaned low and steady, like a voice too tired to scream. I got out of the car, stretched my legs, looked up at the night sky. No stars. Just black and quiet. And then the phone lit up. It was her. Amy. The first message was short. Just one word. Where? Where? As if this was still about location. As if my absence could be traced on a map. I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked it and slid the phone into my jacket pocket. No reply. I got back in the car, drove another 5 miles, and found a motel with a vacancy sign half-lit and buzzing. The clerk didn't ask questions. Took my ID, gave me a key, pointed toward a room that smelled like dust and tired stories. The bed was hard. The walls were thin. The shower dripped. But for the first time in years, no one raised their voice. No one waited for me to react. No one weaponized silence to get what they wanted. I lay on the bed, fully clothed, hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't revenge. This was relief. Across town, I imagined her in the kitchen, staring at that wall where the plate shattered. Maybe sweeping up the pieces, maybe pretending it didn't happen. Maybe telling herself I'd be back. But I wasn't just gone. I had stopped turning around. The silence I left behind was louder than anything she ever shouted. Back at the house, Amy must have walked into the silence like it owed her an apology. But that's the thing about silence. It doesn't explain itself. It just expands. Room by room. Breath by breath. And when you've built your whole identity on control, the absence of sound feels like losing oxygen. She started small. 2 texts that night. Where are you? Followed by, can we talk? I saw them light up my screen in the dark motel room. I didn't open them. Didn't need to. I already knew what they would say. The words were a formality. Habit. She didn't miss me. Not yet. She missed the version of me that never walked away. The one who absorbed the blows and called it love. I turned off the phone. The next morning, I drove to a coffee shop across town. Sat by the window with a black coffee and no plans. Just watching people live lives that didn't involve second-guessing every word, every glance, every moment of peace that might be mistaken for apathy. I thought I'd feel guilt. I didn't. What I felt was clarity. Meanwhile, she was unraveling. I didn't need cameras to see it. I knew her too well. She'd be pacing, calling my name like it still meant something, rewriting the fight in her head so that I was the aggressor, the overreactor, the one who turned a simple argument into a meltdown. She'd call it a bad night, a heat-of-the-moment thing. She'd sweep the shards of that plate into the trash like you can throw away what broke without dealing with why it shattered in the first place. But houses remember. The crack in the paint, the dent in the drywall, The silence in the hallway that used to hum with casual conversation. Now it just echoed. By day 2, she started calling. Not just texting, calling. I watched her name light up on the screen. No custom ringtone this time. Just the default buzz of someone who no longer had priority. I let it ring. Let her feel the weight of her own echo. At some point, the messages changed tone. Less direct. Less angry. More vague. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. Can we reset? Reset? She still thought this was a glitch. A glitch in the cycle where I disappear for a night or two, then come back quieter, more obedient. That I'd crawl back with my tail between my legs and thank her for the chance to make things right. But there was no glitch. Just a system failure. By nightfall, I could picture her curled up on the couch, scrolling through old photos, watching for a last scene that on my chat window like it was a lifeline. She'd start thinking of ways to pull me back. Her smile, her touch, the promises she made when things got rocky. Maybe even tears. But tears don't fix echo chambers. They just make them sound fuller. I lay on the stiff motel bed that night, staring at the same ceiling, hearing the same silence. But this time, it felt different. Not empty. Not lonely. Just quiet. She thought silence was punishment. She had no idea it was healing. She thought she needed space. She forgot that space can swallow you whole. I spent the third night parked on an empty rooftop lot downtown. No lights. No distractions. Just the echo of my thoughts bouncing around inside my head. The city buzzed quietly below, but up there, it felt like another planet. Still. Detached. Honest. I didn't cry. Didn't rage. I just let everything settle. Every little moment I'd buried under the label of keeping the peace started surfacing. Not in flashes, but in sequence. Like watching surveillance footage of your own life. The way she used to cut me off mid-sentence and act like I was rambling. The time I surprised her with a weekend away, and she spent the first night scrolling on her phone. All the moments I stayed quiet when I wanted to speak, apologized when I wasn't wrong, reached out when she pulled away. I remembered how many birthdays I spent planning gifts she never asked about, only to have mine reduced to a passing. Oh, I almost forgot. I remembered the dinners where I'd try to talk about my day, and she'd nod without looking up from her screen. The jokes she didn't laugh at anymore. The hands she stopped holding. The nights she rolled away. And how I told myself it was just a phase. Just stress. Just something to wait out. But sometimes waiting is just another form of giving up on yourself. I leaned back against the driver's seat, closed my eyes, and whispered it like a confession to no one but the dark sky above me. Not this time. This wasn't me being dramatic. It wasn't a power play. It wasn't revenge. It was the quiet decision to stop being the only one fighting for something neither of us respected anymore. I had spent years believing that being a good man meant enduring, absorbing, carrying both our weights. But that wasn't love. That was erosion. Slow, silent erosion of identity under the pressure of keeping a house from collapsing when the foundation was already cracked. And it hit me. She never asked me how I felt unless it was to redirect the spotlight back to her. Every moment I needed support, she mirrored it with distance. And I trained myself to expect that. To lower the bar again and again, until it was practically on the floor. But now I'd stepped over it. And once you do that, there's no going back to crawling. I checked my phone. 22 unread messages. Some angry, some soft, a few just question marks. I didn't open them. Instead, I pulled up my camera roll. Not to look at pictures of her, but to remind myself who I used to be. The man who smiled without wondering if it would be noticed. The man who didn't calculate his words to avoid setting someone off. The man who found peace in solitude, not panic. That man wasn't dead, just buried. I think I started digging him out the second I stepped away from that shattered plate. And now? Now I was beginning to breathe again. She posted a happy selfie, but you can't filter loneliness. It took less than a week for her to go public. A photo appeared on her feed, her at some rooftop bar, cocktail in hand, eyes squinting in the sunlight, smiling like nothing was broken. Caption said something like, "New energy #fresh start." I stared at the image for a long time. Not because I missed her, but because I knew that version of her didn't exist. That wasn't a woman starting over. That was a woman spinning in place, hoping if she moved fast enough, no one would see the cracks. She tagged a friend in the picture. One she hadn't spoken to in months. One she used to call toxic behind her back. Now they were clinking glasses for likes, laughing into the lens like they hadn't just lived through a rupture. That's the thing about people who fear silence. They fill it with noise. And Amy? She hated silence more than anything. So she posted. And posted. Photos of dinner plates she didn't eat. Laughter with people who barely knew her. Beach views that looked nothing like her city. Everything curated to send one message. Look how unbothered I am. But I knew her too well. That fake laugh? It always ended with her eyes scanning the room. That outfit? She hadn't worn it in years. Too extra, she used to say. Now it was armor. Costume. Proof of life for an audience she hoped included me. I didn't react. Didn't like. Didn't view the story long enough to register the scene status. I just turned off my screen and let the performance go on without me. Because I wasn't part of her stage anymore. Meanwhile, in real life, the silence started getting to her. She texted again. A long one this time. I just want to clear the air. I didn't mean what I said. We were both upset. Can we please just talk? There it was, the soft pivot. The rewrite of history. Suddenly we were both at fault. Suddenly her screaming, throwing plates, calling me selfish, that was mutual? That was balanced? I didn't respond. Because the moment you start negotiating with the version of you they invented in their head, you've already lost. The next day, another post. Her with a dog. Someone else's dog. Caption. Look who made my day. I almost laughed. She was broadcasting a movie no one asked to see, hoping I'd sit in the audience with regret in my chest. But I wasn't watching. I was living. I met up with my brother that night. We grilled out back, drank cold beers, talked about music, old stories, dumb memories. I hadn't laughed like that in months. Not the polite, tight-lipped chuckle I'd perfected over the years. This was real, chest deep, unfiltered. And for a moment, I forgot what it felt like to be watched, to be monitored, to be corrected. There were no passive-aggressive digs about the way I chewed. No sideways glances when I talked too long. No arms folded across the chest like every word I said had to justify itself. Just air. Just light. Just normal. Meanwhile, she kept posting. But digital smiles can't reach empty pillows. And I knew, the second the filters came off and the glass was empty, she'd feel it. The thing she never thought she'd lose. Not my presence. My peace. Regret doesn't come all at once. It seeps in, like cold air through a broken window. It started with silence. Not mine, hers. No posts. No stories. No new selfies. Just nothing. And that's when I knew the mask had slipped. Because people like Amy don't go quiet unless they're drowning. I was sitting on a bench outside a coffee shop when her name popped up again. This time, no performance. No emoji-laced apologies. Just raw text. I know I went too far. Can we please talk? Simple. Straight. The first message that didn't try to rewrite the narrative or dress it up as misunderstanding. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then locked it. No reply. The next morning, another text. I miss you. And then, a photo. An old one. Me and her. Taken years ago on some random Tuesday night when we made pancakes for dinner and laughed about nothing for hours. We looked happy. Back then. Maybe we were. Or maybe I just didn't know better. There was no caption with the photo. She wanted it to speak for her. But memories aren't proof. They're just snapshots of a time that doesn't exist anymore. And trying to weaponize them now, it was too late for that. I spent the day doing something simple: laundry, dishes, a run through the park. Things that grounded me. Things I'd stopped doing for myself when I made my life revolve around keeping hers intact. It felt good. Not as a distraction, but as a return. Later that night, another message. Please just talk to me. One call. That's all I'm asking. I turned off the notifications. Because I already knew how the call would go. Tears. Half apologies. A reframe of events that made it sound like she lashed out because she cared too much. The implication that I should have known how to comfort her through it. That it was my job to absorb the impact again. But I wasn't her mirror anymore. I wasn't going to reflect back the version of herself she wanted to believe in. I went for a walk. Through quiet streets, empty sidewalks. A light wind picked up. That kind of breeze that slips into your collar and reminds you how alive your skin still is. How here you are. And that's when I felt it. The full weight of peace. Not relief. Not revenge. Just peace. Because for the first time in years, my phone could light up with her name, and I didn't have to feel anything. Not love. Not anger. Not even curiosity. I had stepped out of the story. And she was the one left flipping pages, looking for a plot that didn't exist anymore. You can't miss someone you already let go of. A week passed. Maybe more. I stopped counting. Time moved differently when you weren't walking on eggshells. When your phone wasn't a landmine. When your home wasn't a battleground in disguise. I drove out to my brother's place on a Sunday. He lived just far enough outside the city that the stars still showed up at night. We stood by the grill in his backyard, cold beers in hand, laughing about dumb things, old pranks, bad dates, high school stories we'd told 100 times but never got tired of. No tension. No tests. Just breath. Just presence. At one point, he glanced over and said, "You look different, man." I didn't say anything. Just nodded. Because I felt different. Lighter. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd been carrying for her. Not the parts she loved, but the parts she depended on without ever acknowledging. The silent repairs. The swallowed words. The emotional buffering. All that invisible labor that keeps someone else's comfort intact while yours quietly erodes. Now that weight was gone. Amy still messaged me. Every couple of days, something new would appear on my screen. A memory. A question. A late night. "I miss you" that came without punctuation, like it had been typed in the dark through tears. I didn't open them, because I already knew the pattern. The cycle. Regret. Flattery. Panic. Guilt. A long string of emotional bait disguised as vulnerability. But I wasn't hungry anymore. I had found peace in simplicity. Coffee that stayed hot. Walks with no destination. Sleep that wasn't interrupted by emotional tension hanging in the air like static. One morning, I woke up to sunshine leaking through the blinds. No alarm. No agenda. Just stillness. I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, black coffee. No second plate. And for the first time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt complete. I didn't wonder what she was doing. Didn't imagine her crying into a pillow or scrolling through our old photos. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. Her regret didn't belong to me. I didn't need her pain to validate my decision. My peace was enough. Later that day, I took a drive up the coast. No music. Just the sound of wind and waves and tires on asphalt. I pulled off near a bluff, climbed the rocks, sat on the edge, and watched the water crash below. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't survival. This was life. Not a reaction to something broken, but a return to something whole. She could cry. She could scream. She could post 100 filtered photos with 1,000 hollow captions. None of it would reach me, because the man she thought she could push, pull, twist, and mold into whatever version of a partner she wanted, he wasn't here anymore. I had found calm, and she no longer had access to it. When control slips away, desperation takes its place. She called just after midnight. The kind of hour where your voice sounds more honest, more raw, like the darkness peels back all your rehearsed lines. I let it ring 5 times before I answered. Not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I was done pretending she still had access to it. Her tone was different this time. No fire. No edge. Just soft panic wearing a mask of calm. "Josh, hey." I didn't say anything. She hesitated, then kept going. "I've been thinking. A lot. About everything. I wasn't fair to you. I know that now." Her voice wavered on that last part, like she was hoping I'd interrupt. Reassure her. Fill the space with something soft. But I didn't. "I said some awful things that night," she continued. "I was angry. But it wasn't about you. It was me. I was stressed. I felt unseen. And instead of talking to you, I broke something. I broke us. A pause. A breath. A silence that begged to be filled. You always tried. You always showed up. Even when I didn't deserve it. And I pushed you away over and over and still expected you to stay. That was wrong." I closed my eyes. Not because it hurt, but because I wanted to remember how this felt, to not feel anything at all. "I don't want to lose you, Josh. I'm ready to do better. We can fix this. Please. Just come home. Let's talk. Really talk." And there it was. The plea. Not a scream. Not a demand. But the quiet begging of someone who finally realized the game ended 3 moves ago, and she didn't even see the checkmate coming. I waited 5 seconds. 10. Then said, calmly, "We're not we anymore." She didn't speak. I could hear her breathing shallow, fractured. "You knew what you were doing," I said. "Every time you rolled your eyes, every time you shut me out, every word you threw at me like a weapon. You knew." Her voice came back, smaller. "I didn't mean to, but you did." I cut in. Still calm. Still steady. And that's the part that matters. She broke. I heard it. That shift. The crack. The unraveling that always comes when someone finally understands the consequences are real this time. "Josh?" Her voice was trembling now. I thought you'd always be there. I said, until I wasn't. She sobbed. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that catches in the throat and drips from the eyes without sound. I let it play out. Not out of cruelty. Just truth. This was hers to feel now. I didn't hang up. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't say some soft, parting line for her to cling to later like a memory. I just waited. Until she whispered, I'm sorry. I let the silence stretch again. Then, finally, I spoke. So am I. Then I ended the call. No slamming phone. No revenge. Just finality. Real peace isn't loud. It's the silence after you stop fighting battles you already won. The morning after that call, I didn't feel victorious. There was no rush of triumph, no cinematic moment of standing tall in the mirror, whispering you did it. It was quieter than that. Deeper. Like something heavy had finally slid off my chest and disappeared into the floorboards. I made coffee in silence. No second cup. No toast popping up from the toaster while someone hummed in the background. Just the kettle, the cup, the steam. I sipped slowly, watching the sky shift from gray to gold outside my window. That's all it was. Just a sunrise. But for me, it felt like a rebirth. Amy didn't call again. Maybe she finally understood. Or maybe she didn't know what else to say after someone lets go without slamming the door. A week later, I got a letter. Handwritten. 2 pages. Neat penmanship. She always wrote clean when she was afraid of showing the mess. The envelope sat on my counter for 2 days before I touched it. When I opened it, I didn't rush. I read every word slowly, not because I needed answers, but because I wanted closure on paper. It was what I expected, memories, regrets, pieces of her reaching backward, trying to rebuild a bridge she'd already burned from both ends. I didn't know what I had, she wrote. I see it now. I still love you. I wish I had been kinder. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back inside, and put it in a drawer I don't open anymore. Not out of bitterness. Out of respect for myself. That version of me is gone. The one who tolerated being diminished. The one who thought loyalty meant staying silent while someone chipped away at your worth. He died the moment I stepped through that front door without looking back. I moved again. Nothing dramatic. Just a better place. Smaller. Cleaner. Everything I owned fit in the back of my car. Turns out, when you stop building your life around someone else's chaos, you need less. I kept my mornings slow. My nights simple. I talked to people who spoke with intention, not manipulation. I laughed more. I slept deeper. I stopped second-guessing my own peace. One night, I took a walk through downtown just after midnight. The streets were empty, storefronts closed, streetlights buzzing quietly. It was the same part of the city I used to avoid. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. But that night, it felt different. Like the past no longer had keys to the place I lived. I passed by the park where she once told me I was too passive. That I didn't push back enough. That I wasn't man enough to challenge her. Funny. Back then, I believed her. Now, I see it for what it was, projection. She wanted control, and called it passion. She wanted submission, and called it compromise. And I gave it to her, piece by piece, until I was a silhouette in my own life. But I'm not a shadow anymore. I'm a man who walked away without raising his voice. Without making a scene. Without needing to be seen at all. As I crossed the last street to my apartment, I caught my reflection in a dark window. Not to check how I looked. Just to recognize the man staring back. And I did. She thought I needed her to be whole. I just needed to stop patching broken things. And that's the secret they never tell you about peace. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives when you stop standing in the rain for people who never learned how to carry an umbrella. So I kept walking. Into the quiet. Into the clean air. Into the version of my life where the only voice I answer to is my own. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.